So my name is Mark Cowling. I'm part of a small core team at Gather Movement that connects with church unity movements around the country. And every month we make a recording about how church unity groups can think about social, cultural, and spiritual transformation of their places. For those of you who know Roger Sutton, the founder of Gather Movement, you'll know that his late wife Leslie was an artist and worked with artists in mission speaking to the city of Manchester. So I'm really pleased that Martin's with us today. Martin ran a fantastic event in Salford just recently that helped us think about this. So Martin, thank you for being here. And can I hand over to you? Is that okay? And I'll finish up, close at the end, but hand over you
sure.
to take us through this discussion together. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Let's Mark, do you want to remove the there we go. That's it. That was lovely, by the way, all those images. That was good. Mark and I, and then the rest of his team, we were having a chat about this a few months ago. And as we were talking, talking particularly about unity movements and how as churches work together, there tends to be a lean towards when we're thinking of how do we work together, how do we transform the city, looking at third sector and how churches engage in social action, looking at politics, local government, that kind of thing, health and education, they seem to be, housing. And as we were talking about how those ways of engaging and seeing the city transformed are very helpfully measurable, really quite measurable. You can see as you're feeding people or as you're looking after carers and under fives and whatever, some of the things that churches are amazing at and bringing glue and cohesion across their community. You can actually count numbers and you can see change. And there's it's helpfully utilitarian. Whereas when it comes to how a city might be transformed through creativity in the arts, it's really much harder to measure. And because of that, I think there is a tendency to then see those things that are less measurable, to see them as luxuries. And so if we've got time, or if there's someone who comes along, we might, as the cherry on the cake, we might do something a bit creative or something a bit artistic. We can't measure it. We don't know if it's going to do anything, but we've got some extra capacity or we've got some good friends. And that happens in church life. And it happens, I think, as we think of our cities. And it really just wanting to spend a little bit of time addressing some of that so that we might rethink how we understand the role of artists and creatives in the city as not necessarily luxury items, however unmeasurable some of their work might be to begin with. But actually in the Holy Spirit, there's incredible value. And in the Holy Spirit as well, when we open our eyes, we can actually see the impact of these things. It's just a little bit harder than seeing the impact of finances and resources and that sort of stuff. So we're looking at, I've got two sort of questions really that we can throw around. One is if the sort of essential, if we're saying that artists and creatives are needed in the city for its transformation, and even in a church community for its growth and health, then what does that look like? So it'd be good for us to just think around some examples of that when we've seen it, we've touched it, we've smelt it, we've sensed it. It might be quite hard to describe, but we know when we've come across it that it's been incredibly good. And so as we talk about it, we might come up with some words, some vocabulary, and some examples that bring some definition to it and bring it out of the sort of ether and into reality. And then the other question, this is something that Mark raised with me, was how do church leaders, unity leaders, how do they bless artists, make room for artists? How do they support artists, encourage creatives in their work, so that there's some cheering and some room being made, and there's some direction being given and welcome being given. So those are the two things, basically, is what have we seen? What does it look like? And what is its impact when artists are bringing transformation? And the other one, the response is then, how therefore do we facilitate this, make room for this, encourage it, bless it, that sort of thing. So those are the two things. I recognize we've got some creatives here, so I might call on some of you to give actual examples, but all of us here may well, as we're talking, may well go, oh, I saw this, or I've experienced this, or I remember this. And so as we do it, I'm hoping that we're going to paint a picture of what it means for artists to be prophets, to almost go ahead of everyone rather than be trailing behind and being there if there's a bit of extra cash, to actually go ahead of everyone and break the ground and create spiritual and cultural space for then the church and charities, third sector, individual Christians to come in and do what they do. So, that in mind, who would like to? I might not say who. I'll just start with Ben and Simon from Saltmine, because I know that they've been involved in a passion play, taking it to different cities, which is quite different from running a food bank or a homeless work. So just maybe you could say what you've, Ben and Simon, what have you seen the result of when you've done that passion play in different towns and cities? What's been the impact on do you think, on the city, but also on the churches that have invited you? And how has that impacted them and their relationships and their mission and sense of calling for their city? So those two things.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Martin. Yeah, we are representing Saltmine Theatre Company. We've been going for about 45 years. And in 2019, our CEO was really felt by God to tell the story of God's Son. And so we had this idea of doing passion plays on the streets. I mean, they've been done, it's probably the longest bit of theatre that's been going in one sense, but we decided for us to do them, set them in the modern day. And we almost talk about it as like theatre without walls, and almost maybe church without walls, of being on the streets in the city centres, in the town centres, and telling the passion story. So like I said, modern day, but from Jesus' entry into Jerusalem up into his death and resurrection. And we do this as a churches together thing, and we get community cast. So that's people from the churches and communities that can be part of the show as well. So they're musicians, they're interacting with the show, and it's making it an immersive experience. So yeah, we've done it in Norwich, in Stafford, in Dudley, and last year it was in Hereford and Wilmslow. And yeah, I think our heart with it has been that it is about bringing churches together, and it's about giving them a vehicle of evangelism, which is non-denominational, but can bring them together in something that they can do live on their streets, whether that's a city or a town. In Stafford, for example, which we did in 23, the church leader there, he gave us a quote that said, undoubtedly, the Staffordshire Passion Play has been the biggest contributor to local church unity for at least 2 decades. So that for us it's just giving something that can form people's mission together to go, we can be behind this, and this can be something that we can do together. And from that, they did at least 6 different alpha type groups, which they were able to invite people to the different churches, and had a great response from that. So it's that side of it where it's both about forming something that can be for church unity. There was a church leader who last year, for whatever reason, had fallen out with the local church unified group, but was able to come together and have forgiveness because they're like, well, let's do it for the purpose of evangelism here as well. So that's kind of a picture of the unity side. I don't know if you want to fill in on the other bits.
Other bits, going did well. I think bringing the community together, like we run a community cast evenings. So running up, we do about 3 or 4, so sometimes a few more things where we encourage people, not just from the churches, but people who enjoy acting and being creative and doing something new, and encouraging people to step outside themselves a bit, to get involved. So we've got the show that we put on with the Passion is 16 cast, but then we need a community cast, and we make the show around the town. So we put it into modern day, but contextualize it within the town that we're going to make it feel relevant to the people that we're performing to, their lives in their current moment. And so not only is it linking the churches together, it's giving the communities, or just the individuals, to feel like they have a community to be a part of that is creative, that is something new, that is around solely focused on God's story, but getting it out there, getting it out on the streets. The amount of people that we've attracted who didn't even know what was going on, that just turned up and have joined the procession, as it were, moving around from scene to scene around the town has been amazing. And some of the conversions that have happened from that, the stories are incredible. But yeah, the people that have come along to the community cast particularly have just felt a bonding for and a passion for their communities once again, and giving them something to go, yeah, this is who we are, and this is what we want to celebrate within our communities.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks. Hopefully that gives a flavour.
Right, great, thank you. Has anyone got any questions of these guys, or comments or responses on the back of what they just said?
Can I say something, Martin?
Yeah.
We did for a couple of years part of a passion play in Ealing with churches together. It was really difficult to put on because I think there were some people who felt they should be doing it rather than us. But what surprised me was we had a Jesus figure and a cross. And for those of you that don't know, Ealing is incredibly multicultural. And we were able to close the road, have it come down the Uxbridge Road. And I was watching people watching it, and they were literally running to see this Jesus figure. And fortunately, we had people who were meant to be soldiers around Jesus. He'd have been mobbed. And there was something about the presence of God moving through the centre of Ealing that I can't explain. And that people had the opportunity to respond to something they didn't even know they would want to. I'm not even saying we did it perfectly or great, but I was so astounded by people's responses. It's great. Just
Great.
Yeah. In a sense, that was a physical prayer.
Mm-hmm.
A physical prophetic act, which for me is something the arts is all about. Whether it's got Jesus in it, yeah, as obviously as that did. But, yeah, that's all.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. Thank you. I think that's a great comment where you said, I can't explain it. I can't explain. And that's one of those things when it comes to the arts, when it comes to the power of the arts, it's quite hard to explain. And therefore, it's you think, how do we reinvent that? What was it that was so good? And whereas with other projects, we know what's so good, and we can replicate it left, right, and centre. Whereas when it comes to the arts, whatever, whether it's visual arts, performing arts, it's quite hard to identify that and then to go, right, this is, we can do it here or we can do it there. It is possible. I think, like I said, it was a living prayer. It was prophetic. These are all sort of fairly ethereal words and what have you. You think, oh gosh, but the power of it when people's hearts are being stirred in this way that even they don't understand. I've got another example. We'll stick with theatre and then we'll move to another art form. I was up in York. I don't know if Alison is still kind of on the call. I think she is. But I was in York. I don't know if you saw the community play that Riding Lights did, Alison, because we communicated about it. I went up there to see it. It wasn't a passion play. It was about Roundtree. It was about these kind of Quaker Christians doing some really great social action back in the day. It was about poverty, lifting people out of poverty, and it was about York. Big community play, written by Christians, but not in a Christian space and not performed by Christians. But I was just incredibly impacted by the message, the content of it. It seems so relevant. I wrote to the guy who's CEO of Christians Against Poverty, said, you've got to go and see. He did go and see it. I said, you've got to go and see this. This is like an advert for Christians Against Poverty, this whole play. So he went up to see it a couple of nights later. Alison, what did you think, or what do you think other people in your city, what was their response to that production?
It was very powerful because it kind of linked what's happening in the present day and poverty in York now to what was happening 100 years ago, and how poverty was still a really significant issue for us. And even despite all of the work that's gone on and all the understanding of root causes, and poverty is still increasing rather than going down. And I actually heard that some people who kind of work in government had been there and had just felt like inspired to continue with what they're doing in their anti-poverty work. So I think it's been pretty impactful for people that are working in anti-poverty stuff, that they feel inspired to continue, and people that aren't, but have that their awareness is raised a bit about what is going on now, as well as the history. And I think for York, because it's a historical place, doing something that's around the history brings people in because it's interesting, but actually then applying it to modern day was really powerful.
Yeah, and it wasn't a Christian audience, was it? It was hundreds of people every night coming from the city to basically just get this. It was incredibly prophetic message. It was very, very moving, and where you talk about the people in politics in terms of the actual real stuff. I know there's one person who's in politics in your city, and I heard that she came to see it on the opening night, and then the people who were the actors, the women who are playing the people on the shop floor, i.e. the workers, the poor, because they like this politician, as she left, they then came out after her and gathered around her to say to her, thank you so much for all that you've done for the city. So it was like life imitating art, or art imitating life. I don't know which way around it was really, but it was the actors playing the working women. They themselves gathered around this person who's been championing workers' rights and anti-poverty and that kind of thing. And so that sort of story is amazing. Then I know there was someone, and when he came on, there was this guy who came on and he was showing Roundtree, this young Roundtree, around the poverty of London. This character was big, kind of gruff guy. Anyway, I found out from the director later, this guy is homeless. And so he came in, because it's a warm space to rehearse. He came into the rehearsals as a homeless guy. Then he has this character of showing Rowntree what homelessness and poverty looks like in the City of London. That was his character. And again, just life, it's just like, so he himself personally was welcomed and looked after, found a place in the community. It was really good for him personally. And then to think that he was the one who was pointing out to Rowntree, and therefore to us, the audience, this is what poverty looks like. I found that incredibly moving. Again, it's there's something about the way that all art, performing arts, visual arts, music, the way it works, that actually when that Holy Spirit just does extraordinary things and makes extraordinary connections, and it is not simply watching a piece of art. What happens is real life is embraced and understood in ways it just would not be. When you hear a poem, when you look at a painting, when you watch some dance theatre, something happens, and you get it in a way that you don't with a preach, and you don't with a sermon, and you don't with a speech or whatever. So yeah, thank you for that. I think really helpful having those responses about theatre. Maybe I could just go over to you, Rich. You do music, you do visuals, you're illustrating. What about the power of imagery? Because that's your business, isn't it, Rich? As a professional, you're an image maker, I guess. How might you see the power of imagery impacting a city and also impacting how churches work together for the sake of their city?
Well, I'm not sure about the last point, to how churches work together, but I think the greatest example I can think of is this week when Banksy put his mark on the Royal Courts of Justice.
Yeah.
I think, he creates global headline news by putting that mark on there because it represents and symbolizes the deep angst and kind of anger in public opinion, and I guess that's what's happening. I'm not trying to make a political statement here on this call, but I think for me that was just an incredible example of the power of art in the city. What he did, and I think also, it's the same theme because it's obviously a massive thing at the moment. But I'm into cycling and watching the La Vuelta, the Spanish tour at the moment, is consistently interrupted by people with the Palestinian flag, again, which is an incredible piece of graphic design. Again, I'm not trying to make a political statement, but I think I'm interested in where art or design is used as protest, or maybe raising awareness around things that are relevant and really matter. And I think I was actually one of the soldiers on Anne's Passion play through Ealing. So, but I think. Yeah, that's what I'm fascinated in. If you look back through history, graphic design and art has been used in incredible ways for good and bad, to, even from the swastika to all kinds of things to represent movements and convince people to do certain things, or to represent solidarity and, movements against darkness and evil. And I think that's what I'm fascinated with, really, and I guess to answer the end bit is, how can the church and art come together? I think sometimes it's what's the word? It's a uneasy relationship, maybe, because artists can sometimes be a bit quirky and they maybe speak a different language, and I think sometimes probably maybe artists are guilty of sticking with their tribe. Whereas the richness is when we all kind of blend together and can find ways to do things together. So I definitely don't have any answers. One of the most significant things I've ever been involved in is with Anne and Shire Arts Awards in central London, when they engaged hundreds of artists that ended up taking over the back of the building in the Oxo Tower, which was phenomenal expression of art, creativity, sculpture, around always around loose themes of spirituality and God. And I you know, it was incredible. And it was just, you know, you could tell people were so impacted as they went in and looked at beautiful portraits and then quite disruptive stuff as well, right in the heart of London, you know, next to the river and you know, and in the Oxo, behind the Oxo Tower. But I think that uneasy relationship would be good to see, kind of flag bearers or partnerships to make that better and make that, you know, yeah, to see examples of that. And I remember the guys who shared already, you know, there's some amazing stuff with performing arts on the streets and all this stuff is, yeah, I've experienced it and seen it and it is incredible, you know. But yeah, my thing is more probably the visual painted graphics type stuff, and that's what I'm interested in. So
thank you. Yeah, we'll come to that relationship bit in a while. But Anne, could you just mention, Rich just said about this Chaya Arts Awards. What was that? What was going on there, and how do you think that impacted sort of aspects of city life in London?
Well, it always comes down to how do you measure it? What are you looking for? See, if you want us to know the impact, I think part of it's about, do we really believe that creating things that are singing the praises of God have an impact in and of themselves as a prayer, as prophetic, as also standing against the powers and allowing and releasing God? If we want to measure it in terms of, oh, well, this many people became Christians, it's all going to fall down flat and not work. So how do we really believe, those of us who are in it actually has an impact and is something that God himself invests himself in? I believe that, though I will do it. But I think it's very difficult. And I look around and see, you know, are there people who feel they will do their 10,000 hours as a beginning, not as an end, in order to really give what God has put in them, because that's what God is wanting to say. But sorry, that Chaya Art Awards, we ran for 7 years. We did 3 exhibitions. The third exhibition was over 120 artists who were contributing, as Rich said, in different mediums. It was judged by judges, not all Christians. It had a theme. The last theme was awe and wonder, and it was about people responding to that theme. Now, they might not believe in it, and they could say that, or people might really believe in it and want to express that, and they would say that. And then we chose the best, the finalists, 120, and out of that, we gave a prize of £10,000. So we did it for 7 years. Many people in London, see, I think that's a prayer. I think that's prophetic. We were by the Thames. Why would that not speak to the powers over London? But can I get any more funding for it? Did anybody in the press, Christian or non-Christian, actually write about it the last time we did it? No. But was it worth it? I think so. That's our problem as artists.
Yeah, thanks. So how about we just open it out now to this, it's coming back to this first thing I raised about how do we can see why it's quite hard to press into the arts, because it's really hard to measure it and therefore believe in it. So Anne says it's basically a step of faith. You believe in it and you do your 10,000 hours of practice in the hope and belief that when you do your stuff, there will be an impact. Sometimes we get glimpses of that impact. We get stories. We hear that it might lead to X, Y, and Z that seems more measurable. But how about just getting just anyone now kind of around this call, responses to some of these stories and ideas, particularly from a city perspective of how might we begin to invite artists and creatives, and what are the blockages and obstacles to us doing that? Anyone want to chip in? Just go for it. Yeah, Esther.
Hi, yeah, I can give a little perspective in Liverpool. One of the nice things about being a part-time doctor is I get some time to go out and be creative and to find out what's going on in the community. So one of the things that I've got involved with is some poetry work in Liverpool. My friend Ali Harwood has been helping the Anglican Church with its sort of the way it connects with the history of transatlantic slave trade in Liverpool. So they've been doing some work for the Slavery Truth Project, and St. James and City Church has been involved with that, and it's been encouraging the congregation of the church to come and reflect and produce some poetry, sometimes individually, sometimes coming together in a group. But I recently went to a performance of that at a poetry evening, which was a mainly non-Christian audience, I would say, but certainly with a heart for social justice. And it was really amazing to see this work from a sort of Christian background being sort of digested by the Liverpool community. So just one example, but I've also seen prophetic art for the first time at some regional prayer gatherings, and even in a tent mission in a park in Liverpool. So that's very new to me, the idea of prophetic art, but yeah, very powerful, and certainly a lot of prayer and a sort of vision casting came out of that. So just a couple of examples. So
would you say, Esther, that you being exposed to the poetry thing and this other art, but would you say, yeah, even if you can't describe why, but there is you see there could be a value in this in terms of bringing the presence of God into Liverpool and the people of Liverpool, that you actually see that there's a poetry reading, which sounds incredibly erudite, doesn't it? A poetry reading has real value. Did you experience that?
Yeah, it's certainly a way of connecting with the emotions, certainly to cover very challenging social justice topics were very relevant in the past. But then I went on to have the opportunity to present a modern slavery poem and bring it full circle and really activate people to those important Christian social justice themes that are going on in our world today. I think it's interesting because you've got this sort of high art, low art thing. I'm very much in the craftivism and low art sort of area. I was going to say there's something about health and well-being as well, and a lot of the Christian community hubs and other community centres are offering these art programmes just for everyone to open it up and bring that holistic sort of healing. Like it's just good for the soul. So again, Ali, he does poetry, but he also does create art. So I've had the privilege of joining his community art class for a few weeks, which is something I don't think I saw that coming, but I really needed it for myself. He is a Christian artist and it's outside of a church, but I think the more we see the Christian community hubs and the outreach and the missions, I think that's where I'm seeing the overlap at the moment.
That's really helpful. Thanks for that low art, high art thing. Completely get what you mean. But yeah, to bear in mind that certainly in terms of mental health, how people engage in arts and crafts is incredibly. You can see it and you can experience it in your own heart within an hour, can't you? There's the change, whether it's movement, acting, painting, whatever, the change is incredible, as well as what we've heard about these pieces of art that are perhaps they've been crafted by someone who's got a huge amount of expertise, but what they're saying also communicates and has an impact. So there's a huge spectrum. Yeah, thanks, Esther. Anyone else got a comment from your city or from your place?
I'd love to share a photo, not of my place, but somewhere else I saw. So I don't know if Mark could give me rights to share. It's a photo I took 15 years ago in St. Peter's, Hereford. They'd done a really smart reordering Thanks. Here we go. It's on the wrong window. Oh. Try again. All right, we'll get that. Photos, share. That's better. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
So I love this on several levels. First, you've got that amazing art of the old, or artistry of the old rood or whatever it is. But then community, the labels on it said that these were created by local schools, these two pieces of art. So an artist had done the design and then worked out how to do it, and then local school children had done the individual pieces. And I think it's glorious, and it just stops you in your tracks when you come in. And I'd so love to see that where I am, something like this.
Right.
So I'm looking for opportunities for community created art under the guidance of somebody that knows what they're doing, which isn't me.
No, yeah, thank you. I work with some artists who do this kind of thing. They work with the community and they create installations, sculptures, two-dimensional pieces like this. And the more they've done it, the more they're getting known. There's a town near me called Newport. It's not the Welsh one. It's in Shropshire, and they commissioned a sculpture to represent their town. And so John and Debbie gathered the people of the town and created this thing. And then Tamworth found out about this, and so Tamworth approached them and said, "Can you do the same thing? Can you represent Tamworth in a bit more of a Saxon kind of way?" So they did it there. But John and Debbie do this as well with churches, and there is something about the participative nature of this, like you say, with the school children there. You can imagine them all taking a piece of that Christ's face and whatever, and slightly different colours, and then it all gets put together. But they're enjoying it, they're owning it, they're being shepherded and looked after. So the process of it is fabulous, and then when it's put together by someone, let's say, who knows what they're doing, the impact of it for other people who haven't been involved in the making of it, but they look at it, is fabulous. And so that's two strands of fabulousness, isn't it? It's like, as you get two things for one. You get a piece of art that the investment in it, the process of it has been great. And then afterwards, thinking of Liverpool, I went to Liverpool Cathedral a few months ago, and I can't remember her name, but she'd done all these amazing hangings, these threaded textiles all over the cathedral. See, and it's the biggest cathedral, isn't it, in Britain or something? Anyway, it's massive. There was so many people in this cathedral looking at these hangings, so hundreds and hundreds of people, and they were flowing through every day after day after day. You got hundreds of people basically looking at the story of Jesus, looking at the parables of Jesus, looking at Genesis chapter 1 and 2. It's like, wow, how would I get this number of people in to consider Jesus, the Bible? How am I ever going to reach people like that? Well, they did it in Liverpool, and I know she's been touring various different cathedrals with these textiles, but it was I found it very moving, really enjoyed it, but I was as moved by watching everyone else there, thinking, wow, this is extraordinary. This is one woman who's just done it. I don't know how many hours work it was, just like forever, millions of stitches. But the end result was stunningly beautiful, very educational, and in the right place, in the right building. It was a really great experience as well for everyone. It just, like Anne was saying earlier, there's something prophetic and moving, and I was trying to write down the sentence that Anne said. Anne said this sentence, and I was kind of scribbling it down. Do we believe that creating things that by their praises of God have an impact in and of themselves? That is what Anne said. And do we believe that this stuff actually impacts as it's created, and then it sings what it's created to be. Do we believe it has an impact? So I wonder if we could talk now about, if we do, how do we encourage, how might we as city leaders encourage artists, creatives? What do we do to bless them, make room for them? If you've got suggestions, Ben, Simon, Rich, about how you know that creatives can be encouraged, and say it, but just or any stories of how room has been made, like you mentioned, Mark, that Leslie Sutton did these incredible art trails in the city of Manchester, where there's just going from place to place, and you're experiencing either art that has already been made, it's already hanging in a particular place, but you then go and see it, or a piece of commissioned a work that's been specially commissioned for this. Obviously room was made for her through who she knew. She knew Roger, and Roger knew some other people, and she knew people. How do we encourage artists? What are we going to do? How are we going to help them? Anyone got any thoughts?
I'd say, I don't know if this comes from the other side of it, but we met with a load of Birmingham church leaders recently who were really struck with how to deal with the issue of knife crime that's happening in Birmingham. And so we were able to just perform a short excerpt from our knife crime performance piece that we do in schools, with the thought of churches being able to pay for it to go into schools. And I suppose it's maybe part of it is finding those platforms where we can keep the conversation going about the needs and how we can meet those in a creative way in whatever form that is. But going, actually, there's a partnership, and maybe that's coming from it from the other angle, but just being in conversation, I suppose.
That's great. Thanks, Ben. Yeah, Esther.
I think certainly from a sort of engaging the community, the other side of it, the low art side, I would love to see more engagement with community. And I do wonder if the community hubs could be a way to do that. But as we know, like funding and the competing sort of resources, it's very challenging. So I think it's almost like when there are conversations with governments, with churches, it's just almost being advocate for both sides, because I think we do need both the commissioned art, but also to engage people on that heart level. As you say, the creative process itself is transformational, and is the displaying of the art and whatever it looks like. But yes, I'm certainly going to be a champion for the community-led side as well. I love that grassroots, that real, the passion that comes behind that.
Yeah.
It may not be the most perfect art, but we need it all, don't we?
Yeah, we do. And so some of that is actually finding. I know, Mark, one of your jobs is to research and find out what's going on, isn't it? You're always talking about that, what's going on in this city. So it's almost like doing the investigation. Who are the community artists? Who are the artists who can help enable that to happen at that very grassroots place? Because there are loads of them. There's absolutely loads of them, but they're hidden away. Because as Mark said right at the beginning, and Rich said, they're not often welcomed by churches. So even if they're in a church, they're kind of hidden away in the church, and no one knows who they are or what they do, and they're a bit odd or whatever. So finding these people, because there are loads of these people, there's absolutely loads of this gift out there, whether it's like I say, performing arts, dance, photography, fine art, whatever, doing stuff in community hubs. I know there's loads of people, but we're not unearthing them, finding, and there's people who have got talent and gift and time, who I think would be very up for giving some time to this. Obviously, if this is their profession, then there's the whole element of how do we honor people properly. But there are artists, just like there are doctors who want to give their skill away for free as well. So maybe, Mark, one of the things to do is how do we investigate where the artists are, both those we can commission, but those who are going to be working locally, grassroots. How do we find them and encourage them? And one thing would be there's a thing called the Christian Creative Directory and Christian Creative Network, but it's a directory where you can find creatives. And so particularly if you're a faith-based organization and you're wanting to find a web designer, or you're wanting to find an embroiderer, or you're wanting to find a choreographer or a film director or whoever, you can go to that directory and you can find some of the skill. Obviously not everyone's on that directory, but at least it's a start. But it might be worth leaders in cities and in towns beginning to identify people who can then participate in the way that Esther was encouraging. Yeah.
Well, one thing thought that was kind of floating through my mind is that cities are actually built by creatives and designers, you know, from the architect through to the way the park's laid out, through to the signage, through to, I mean, without creatives, the city wouldn't exist. And I think sometimes, I know because I am married to Linda, and she was a church leader for a long time. Church leaders and those in leadership in Christian organisations are faced with a huge amount of challenges because often they're under-resourced. So, but I think, I mean, one thing we did for a while, we haven't done it for a while, but in just a very small little simple idea in our church is that we would interview, that was broader than creatives, but we would interview people that didn't often talk, they weren't part of the leadership, and et cetera, but they would be interviewed on Sunday and talk about what they did. And I think if you look, if a church leader was to look at their congregation, they would find a lot of creatives in there. And they could be an arc. I mean, obviously creativity exists everywhere. If you're a GP, you're being creative, but you know, you would find people that did creative jobs, architects, designers, as well as artists and poets and spoken word artists, etc. And I think sometimes allowing those people to talk, so they wouldn't naturally want to talk necessarily in front of other people, but allowing them to express helps the conversation begin to start and express how they see the world in a certain way. And some of those people are contributing to the very fabric of how the city runs. You know, it isn't such a kind of clear line as we think it is. You know, we're all blurred together, and the different things we do help make the city run. But fundamentally, the thought I had was this: you know, the city is built by creatives, and so that felt like quite an interesting thought. You know, where that might go. You know.
Yeah. That's great, Rich. I was reading this morning actually about Norman Foster, interviewed, saying what's the best building. And he said, the best building in my view is not a building. And he's designed, you know, some amazing ones. He said, it's not a building. He says, Trafalgar Square is the best building. It's not a building. And it just made me reflect that, you know, whoever designed and made it happen and spent the money, it's like, oh, what a waste of money. You just got a lot of plinths and lions and whatever. And there's a lot of space here. Do you need all this space? Trafalgar Square has been well worth whatever it cost to do Trafalgar Square. I think we would all say as a nation that was worth it. That's amazing, and it's still amazing. It's still paying back. It's still just giving, and yeah, it's a piece of city design, isn't it? It makes the city. It's so central to the character even of London, and so yeah, we're not simply talking about a painter or an actor. There are all these other creatives who are actually contributing enormously to the health of a city in the way that it's Yeah, and the way that it's designed, the way it's put together, and the way that the bus routes run or don't run, and the way that flow happens in and out of places. And yeah, these are people in our churches, aren't they? But they wouldn't even call themselves creatives necessarily. So then we have to think some other language to get them on board, don't we? Because many people don't even use the word creative about themselves because they don't see themselves as quirky. They've got a job and a salary, and so I like the idea of interviewing people and just getting regular people up there, unearthing their hobbies and their paid for employment. That's really helpful. Yeah. Any other comments?
I was going to say it kind of feeds into the wider business's mission and entrepreneurial Christians and workplace evangelism and all those sorts of topics as well. It's just creative industries within entrepreneurship is just one of many.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can I make a comment, Martin? I'm just thinking about when people get together to organise things. They don't usually include the creatives in that. And what happens is then spaces that people think, oh, we could do with a bit of music there. Let's ask so-and-so to put a piece of music there. Or we could do with a bit of drama there. But if the creatives were part of the whole conversation, it would be amazing what would happen that would be different, that wouldn't be thought of.
Yeah.
And by having them come in so late, because they're always seen as outside of things. Whereas if they're brought in, not everybody, you have to be wise about it, but if they're brought into the making of something to happen, it allows much more creativity for everybody. That's it.
Yeah, that's great. Right at the start of the process, rather than asking them to do something they don't even want to do. Yeah.
Exactly, and just fits into somebody's head that isn't even innovative. Don't we want to be in the business of bringing something into being that has never been in being before?
Yeah,
isn't that what our God wants us to bring into the picture?
That's great. Thank you. Hey, Mark, we've only got 5 minutes left. Shall I hand back over to you and you can wrap it up and lead us in prayer? And,
what a brilliant discussion. I mean, we covered so much there, haven't we? Some of the obstacles to creativity and artists working in the city, the power of art to resource humanity really in reflection and playfulness and protest. I've got lots of thoughts written down here, and I think there's plenty almost to create a manifesto, really, isn't there, for the artist and the city and the church working together. So really so grateful for the way you've led the conversation, Martin, and how everybody sort of added to this. We're really passionate about this at Gather Movement, not just Roger and Leslie, but really wanting to enable and support the arts and the church working together. So I think I mentioned at the beginning of this call, Chris Duffett is going to give us some time. He's an artist and help us connect with more artists and, hopefully work with you and support you to further this discussion and hopefully sharing some stories of what's working well in cities. Let's keep in touch and let's keep sharing our stories. It would be great to close with prayer. And I've just got a couple of notices to give after that. So let's just pray for a second. Heavenly Father, we thank you that you've made us in your image. You've made us creative. You've made us appreciate beauty and design. And we thank you for this conversation today, the richness of threads that we've brought to this discussion, and we want to place it on your altar and to ask you to use it. We want to see your church be a flourishing place for art and beauty and creativity at low level and high level. And we want to see potential of church unity groups where the parts of the body come together, where there are connectors, there are ligaments that can create movement and stability and foundations for a dance, Lord, a dance. And so we place it on your altar today, and we ask that you might breathe into this discussion by your Spirit, that it might bring new life to your church for new times and new seasons. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.